Hello, I'm Jake Dailey, Service Officer of American Legion Post 215 in Eaton, Ohio. I'm standing on the first floor of historic Building 120, called the Putnam Library, built in 1880. It's located on the historic campus of the Dayton, Ohio Veterans Affairs Medical Center. This building is the home of the Miami Valley Military History Museum. And today, I present the 2015 Veterans Day message from the American Legion. 70 years ago, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed what many historians consider the greatest social legislation ever passed by the U.S. Congress. As popular as the GI Bill remains today, it took the horrific cost and bloodshed of World War II to remind many Americans just how great a debt is owed to our veterans. In 1932, thousands of World War I veterans camped out in Washington, D.C. to petition the government for bonuses they felt were owed them. Their campsite was forcibly overrun by the U.S. Army, and at least 2 veterans were killed by the police. And I might add that legislation was passed to afford money for those veterans, but it was never brought forward. They never got it. President Franklin Roosevelt told the American Legion National Convention in 1933 that no person, because they wore a uniform, must thereafter be placed in a special class of beneficiaries over and above other citizens. While Roosevelt would later prove to be a great wartime commander-in-chief, what he and others failed to realize at the time is that veterans were not asking to be a part of a special class. They just wanted a shot at the American dream that they fought so hard to defend. Most Americans profess to truly love our veterans, especially on Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And while their feelings are usually sincere, it is important to remember that veterans are defending us 365 days a year. The heroism that has been demonstrated time and again by veterans, from the American Revolution to the global war on terrorism, is sometimes unnoticed by those of us who enjoy the security that the veterans sacrificed to provide. Let me tell you a story about Army Staff Sergeant Clinton Romesha. He has seen war at its very worst. While serving at Combat Outpost Keating in Afghanistan, he and his comrades were awakened one morning to an attack by an estimated 300 enemy fighters on October the 3rd, 2009. According to his Medal of Honor citation, Staff Sergeant Romesha took out an enemy machine gun team and engaged in taking out a second when he received shrapnel wounds from a rocket-propelled grenade. He continued to fight on and killed at least 3 other Taliban fighters and directed air support to destroy 30 other fighters. After receiving the nation's highest military honor, Staff Sergeant Romesha said he felt conflicted. The joy, he said, comes from recognition of us doing our jobs as soldiers on the distant battlefields, but is countered by the constant reminder of the loss of our battle buddies. My soldiers, my friends. Staff Sergeant Romesha's attitude is not hard to find among the living Medal of Honor recipients. They will never forget the sacrifice of their friends, and neither will the Gold Star families, who will have to cope without the embrace of loved ones. The innocence of their grieving children will be challenged by the dramatic change affecting the security and comfort of family routine. The hearts of their families will feel the loss, leaving them with only memories of their loving mom or dad. Life as they have known it will be much more difficult from now on. Our debt to these heroes can never be repaid, but our gratitude and respect must last forever. For many veterans, our nation was important enough to endure long separations from their families, miss the births of their children, freeze in sub-zero temperatures, bake in steamy jungles, lose limbs, and far too often lose their lives. Military spouses have had to cope with interruptions with frequent changes of address and a disproportionate share of parental responsibilities. The children often had to deal with changes in schools, separation from friends, and hardest of all, the uncertainty of whether or not mom or dad will live through their next combat tour. Remember, our warriors need advocates, and that is why we, America's citizens, must stand ready to make that extra effort in support and assistance when the need is recognized. You cannot fight a war without veterans, and while the utopian idea of a society without war is appealing, let us not forget that wars have liberated slaves, stopped genocide, and toppled terrorists. Stephen Ambrose once wrote, "America's wars have been like rungs on a ladder by which it rose to greatness. No other country has triumphed so long, so consistently, or on such a vast scale through force of arms." It has been often said that without our veterans, Americans would be speaking German, Japanese, Russian, or even a Middle Eastern tongue with a much different idea of freedom and liberty. We must remember, without our veterans, America would not be the America of today. As we look at the Middle East today, we can see there is a large, dangerous, and committed group of fanatics that want us dead. This nation must recognize ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorists have acquired weaponry, as did Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan. And we must also be aware that they are every bit as evil in their intentions. Those who defend us from our enemies must be supported. Whether their service was in Baghdad or Beirut, we need to serve veterans as well as they serve us, even when the guns have temporarily stopped firing. Veterans don't ask for much. They don't want to be in a special class. We should all be aware that the benefits granted to veterans is in reality a small amount compared to the amount of monies given away to foreign nations, especially when this country's human cost is figured in. While not all veterans see war, all who served in the military have expressed a willingness to fight if called to. You can show your support for these great men and women by hiring a veteran in your workplace, visiting a VA hospital, or donating to a veteran's cause. Companies should understand that it's smart business to hire veterans, and when members of the Guard and Reserves deploy, it is America's business to ensure that their civilian careers do not suffer. Homelessness is another issue that affects veterans disproportionately. Too often, today's tattered citizen of the streets was yesterday's toast of the town in crisp uniform with rows of shiny medals. This is hardly the thanks of a grateful nation. We can do better. We must do better. Historians have said that Dwight Eisenhower was prouder of being a soldier than he was of being president. Pride in one's military service is a bond shared by nearly all who have served. This pride is on display on every obituary page in the country, where military service, regardless of how many decades passed, and subsequent achievements reached is mentioned with the death notice of nearly every deceased veteran. Can any CEO or a distinguished Ivy League graduate truly claim to have more responsibility than the 21-year-old squad leader walking point on patrol in Afghanistan? Fewer than 10% of Americans can claim the title veteran. Far less than 1% of our population is currently defending us in the global war on terrorism. And yet, many seem intent on trying to balance the federal budget by diminishing the quality of life programs for the families who have already disproportionately made these sacrifices. As General George Washington cautioned us, he said, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation." Veterans have given us freedom, security, and the greatest nation on earth. It is impossible to put a price on that. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our veterans. And God bless America. Thank you.
Good job.
That's it.